So, Heroku, how many of you have used Heroku? Okay, like a few of you. Doing the selfie thing before? Yeah. So, Heroku is a platform as a service. So what we do is make it ridiculously easy to run code that you have in the cloud. So you basically push the code to Heroku, and we manage it for you. We run it. So we take away a lot of the operational burden. On top of that, like, we support a lot of languages. I think out of the box we support 9 or 10 different languages at this point. And we also have support for something called add-ons. So if you need a database, it's really easy to set that up. Or if you need something to like pipe your logs to, we also have that. So yeah, what I'm going to do is just go through a quick demo of what Heroku is. So this is a repo that I have on GitHub. It's if you're familiar with the to-do MVC thing, this is basically an API that does that. So this is built in Ruby. It's using something called Pliny. So Pliny is an open source project that we have, which I highly recommend that you check out if you're doing APIs. It takes a lot of the productionization burden away, so it has same defaults for things. So if you Google GitHub Pliny, that's going to be the thing that pops up. But this is an example app using Pliny. And this is I'm going to give a demo of this stuff we've been building, and I'm going to use this app or repo as an example of that. So to start with, some of you did this before today, get code from GitHub and push it to Heroku. So what I'm going to do is I clone the repo that I had before. We have it locally, and we open up the folder. We take a look. It's the same code as in the repo. We create an app like many of you did before. So GitHub Satellite production. That's the name of that. You can see 2 URLs. One is the web front end, and the other one is the Git remote. So you can start pushing to that thing now. But this is an app that meets a database. So this is how you do that. And now we have a Postgres database set up. And then we can push the code to that. And you can see that it picks up. It's a Ruby app, and it starts installing all the gems and doing all that stuff. So this is the first time this builds. So it's a little slower than usually, for subsequent builds. And now, this has been deployed, and we can just curl the endpoint, just make an API call to it, if I can type it correctly. And there you see, hello, that's the default endpoint for the app. I had the database set up, but I didn't run any of the migrations. It doesn't have any schema, so that's the thing I'm doing here. So I'm just running a one-off process that loads all of that stuff up. And there we go. We have the database set up with all the user tables and to-do tables. And the app needs a restart, so it's restarting all the dynos because the schema has to be loaded again. So now we can call the API an actual endpoint, which is the /users endpoint, and we post to that to create the user and pretty print it, and bam, there we go. So this is one of the things that Heroku does. It's ridiculously simple to set up apps. You can do more things. If you need config variables of any sort, you need credentials for your Amazon account, you can do that. And we can also do let's run this on 10 instances instead of only a single container. So what I mean by instances, it's kind of like containers if you use Docker containers. So we containerize everything. Yeah, so that's one of the things you get out of the box. So how does this get to using pull requests to drive continuous delivery? Rather than showing the end result, what we've built over the last 1.5 years, the team I'm on, I'm just going to show you feature by feature how we got there. Because when we were doing all these things, it wasn't quite apparent to us what is it that we're building. But in the end, we got to this, which was kind of cool. When you took the step back from the stuff you'd been building, we were like, whoa, do you guys realize we just did this? And that's pretty cool. For all the features I'm going to show you, I'll also show some of the internals, the API calls that we're making both to Heroku and GitHub. Because all this stuff, for the most part, it actually runs all of it on the Heroku platform. But we're not using any special endpoints. I mean, there are a few cases where we do that, but for the most part, this is all user land. You, as developers, you can actually use that. And also, I'll go through some of the challenges we had while building this stuff. So hopefully, you can take some learnings from this, so you don't run into the same issues. So the team I'm on, it's called Developer Experience. We're a team of a few guys. You can see there in the picture. I'm not on it, but there's in the middle a designer that's also based in the UK. He's an awesome guy, so he can stand in for me on that picture. But yeah, we're 2 to 3 engineers, a dedicated designer, a dedicated product manager, and a half-time engineering manager. So one of the guys is both an engineer and then a manager. The team has a lot of autonomy and agency, and by that, like, we basically have free reins over what we do. I mean, we need some support from product and stuff like that, but our lives is to make developers' lives awesome. So we basically feel, oh, like, this would be a cool thing to do, and it would help people, so we go and build that. The way we work is that we do a lot of kind of fast iterations. So we do something like Scrum Kanban-ish, and we try to do 4 to 5 iterations per week where we actually ship something to users. So we do like small increments and we do them fast. And the question we always ask ourselves is like, what is the next most important thing? And I don't mean it in the terms like for me as the engineer, but more like for the customer. Like, what is the most valuable thing we can give the customer? And if you don't know about the lean startup methodology, a lot of the stuff we do aligns with that. Another thing is like experiment. So one of the features I'm going to show you later called review apps, that was actually an experiment that we did. When we were doing the GitHub integration that I'll show also in a bit, we thought like, hey, wouldn't it be cool if we did this? So we took like a week or 2 to do that, and we actually got something working and shipped it to users, and it's super useful. So we actually picked it up as a proper project and went on from there. Another thing is that you need to validate whatever you learn. So some projects that we've done, like they didn't turn out to be as cool as we thought. So you have to be okay with like being wrong. Like this is just like nobody's going to use this, or only like a few people. So you have to be okay with just like throwing out whatever you've been doing for the past few weeks. And like as an engineer that just wants to build things, that can be a bit painful sometimes. But it's all about like making other people's lives better. So using pull requests to drive continuous delivery. Like, let's get back to that. So the first feature we did is something called GitHub Sync. The motivation for doing this was basically, like, deploying directly from GitHub should be like fairly obvious. It should be something we do. Like other passes do that. When I was preparing for this, I looked at like how long did it take us from the first commit till we actually had something in users' hands. And the first internal alpha was in 4 days. So that's like in spirit of the experiments and like fast iterations that we're doing. And we went to private beta in a week, public beta, like which is like thousands of users, like within like what was it, like 2 months. And then at 4 months, like alongside other projects that we did, like we went to GA. So this is like a baked-in feature to the platform. So remember what I showed you before, like this GetPush Heroku master thing. So it's basically getting rid of all this. And just like, let's not be silly and just deploy directly from GitHub. So to get there, I kind of wanted to take a look at the API calls that we're making. When I started at Heroku, GetPush Heroku master was the only thing you can do. There wasn't any API to create builds or kick off builds. So this is one of the first projects I worked on. So I don't know whether you can, like, can you see it in the back, the text there? All right. So it's a post endpoint. So you post to your app a build. And you have a link to a tarball. So a tarball is just like a compressed file with all the stuff in your repo. And one of the things it gives you back is a streaming URL. So it's a URL you can connect to. And it's something SSE-like stuff. And you can get like a streaming build output like you saw with GitPush. And so this is in the Heroku API. This is like one of the primitives we had. And then on the GitHub side, there is this thing called getArchiveLink. And you can say, hey, give me a tarball of all the stuff in the repository. And like there are a few things to note about this API. One is that there are no submodules that you get. So anyone using submodules? OK, good. So this will all work for you guys. And then there's this note up there that says, like, for private repository, these links are temporary and expire quickly. And that is not a joke. So they expire in like a few seconds. So like when we've had like some capacity issues on the build system, like it's not picking up builds right away. Like a few seconds pass and this link is expired, failed build. So that's one thing to be like take note of. And So just to show you what GitHub Sync is, I'm going to connect an app to GitHub. So the app I created before, I'm going to connect it. So I go to the Deploy tab up there, and there is the 3 different mechanisms that we have for deploying from the dashboard. And here you can see, like, I've already authenticated with GitHub. So I have like the organizations that I can connect to. And in a minute, it's going to, yep, there we go. It's opening that up. And it's my personal org, and then I type in plenty to do, which is the repo I had before, and search and connect. And now this Heroku app that I did before, it's connected to that repository. So there's a one-to-one mapping between the repo on GitHub and this app on Heroku. The next thing I want to show is manual deployments. So that's like from this dashboard deploying code from GitHub to Heroku. And the way we do that, you can see down there, there's manual deploy. I hope you can see it. I was hoping for like a big screen so everyone would see. So this is like the master branch, and we hit deploy. And then you can see that it's fetching the code from GitHub, and then it says build master, and you can see the streaming output. So it's the same as you saw in the terminal, but it's just coming through the dashboard now. And then there you go. And if you hit the link, you get the same hello as before. So it's basically deploying the same code again, but through GitHub rather than through the terminal. But like manual deployments are fair enough, but like, wouldn't it be cool if you could have it happen automatically? So I merged something into master, like it would kick things off by itself. So the GitHub API has this thing called webhooks. And a webhook is basically when something changes on your repo, you get a notification about it. So it's an HTTP call that you get. And there's a lot of different types of events that you can get. And the ones we are interested in now is push. So you need to set up these hooks through the API. And there's this section called wildcard events. So if you do set up hooks, like please use that, because otherwise you have to migrate all the hooks that you've set up to use like the different events that you need. So wildcard events, they're your friend. Please do that. The push event, if we look into that, you can see, there we go. It has like a ref, so it tells you like master changed, and it tells you the git SHA of that commit, and it gives you like who made the push and which commits are in it and all that stuff. So from there, to enable automatic deployments through our dashboard, it's just hitting that button, and from there on, like if someone pushes to GitHub on the master branch, it automatically deploys. But we have this other feature, which is wait for CI. And if you have Travis or Circle or something, then it'll automatically wait until you have a green status on the commit before deploying. So I'm not going to show like what this looks like when you push to GitHub quite yet. I'll get back to that. I don't want to spoil the surprise. So another trick with webhooks I want to show is like if you were debugging things in the settings section on the repo under webhooks, you have whichever hooks are set up on the repo. And the send me everything thing, that's the wildcard event, which is your friend. And then here at the bottom, you can see the different events that have been sent. And these crazy UUIDs, they are super helpful. And like what we do with those is we basically log them out. Whenever we get an event from GitHub, we log it out. And the cool thing about that is if you have something set up like Splunk. Familiar with Splunk, anyone? So it's like if you have log entries, like lots of log entries, it's a search cluster. So you basically dump all your logs into that, and it's a search engine on top of it. So you can take that delivery ID and copy it into Splunk, tell it to search in the last hour, and voila, you have all the log entries relating to that. So when you get like support tickets from customers saying like something didn't happen or something happened that I didn't expect, you can actually just look these things up quite easily. And I'd like to make a call out to GitHub support team. They are absolutely awesome. So if you ever have any questions about GitHub, like support@github.com, like they are the masters. They respond quickly. They can usually help out with whatever crazy issue you have. Anything from like small stuff to crazy technical details. So recommend that. One learning from this project is that we did not have a public API from the get-go. So we decided to do like fast iterations. Like we'll do the API later. Like what problems are going to arise from that? So we were doing things really fast, iterating, and we forgot about doing CLI because we were like focusing so much on just building the product and the dashboard side of things. So we don't have a CLI for it. And another thing is that because we're just going at this like crazy speed, we didn't think too much about like what the internal data model should look like. So we were just like, what's the fastest thing we can do, and let's just do that. And oh man, like we got into so much trouble because we figured like there were things we assumed like a one-to-one mapping between. It's not a one-to-one mapping. It's like crazy stuff. So if you have the wrong data model, you have to run some fun data migrations. And also, like we're integrating with the GitHub API, so you have to run migrations across APIs because we can't just like give GitHub a like migration script like please run this. So like doing this migration, we were two engineers. We both started doing it individually and basically failed. Like we spent a whole day each like trying to get it done, but it's just like this is too much. Like I can't do this. So we, as good software developers, we paired up. We made a big plan on a whiteboard like while we were in San Francisco, and it was like 16 different pull requests that we have to do to migrate all this stuff. So we started like coding like crazy. Took about a day. So yeah, give some thought into like the data models and APIs up front. Like it's going to save you so much trouble. So this was GitHub Sync. The next thing I want to talk about is this thing called review apps. And the idea there is, this is the experiment that I mentioned before. So for every pull request that you open on GitHub, you've seen how easy it is to spin up apps on Heroku with databases and everything. So we thought, like, if we open up a pull request, wouldn't it be cool if we would spin up like a whole new Heroku app that's isolated from everything else, ship the code, run all the database migrations, all that stuff, and then somehow put a comment or something on GitHub so you can actually click through to the running app and not just review the code on GitHub, but actually see what you've been building and testing. And one cool thing with that we thought is like it's not just cool for the developers, it's also non-developers. So you can have product people take a look at it and like people that don't necessarily have coding skills. So you can say like, is this like the thing that you actually wanted? And it's isolated from everything else. So this is inspired by something called Fourchette. So there was one guy on the team that set this Fourchette thing up for the Heroku dashboard. It needed some tweaking and hacking, but once it was set up, like it was awesome. So we were like, okay, there's like precedent for doing this. And the way Fourchette works, it basically does all these steps that I did before. So we didn't want to write like a service that did that. And as it turns out, just after the build API, there was another project called app setups. And maybe there's an app.json there. You can see that. An app.json is basically a declarative specification what is needed for this app to run. So you can see there's like a Postgres database. There is how to run the data migrations. So we have everything encoded in there that you need to run the app. Also config vars, like if you need S3 credentials, like you should not commit those in there. You can inherit them from like a parent app. That's implementation details. Like if you set this up, you'll get to all that. So the app setups thing, we built it for something called Heroku button. So it's like it was not built for review apps. And like the way that works is we get this button on the repository, and you can click that. It takes you to the Heroku dashboard. You get this UI, and you can just say deploy this. So this is instead of doing all the cloning that I showed in the beginning and setting it up. And it's just like a couple of clicks, and you have the app running on Heroku. And I actually think that Hubot has a button like this. I think it did at some point, but I haven't checked recently. So now, like this has been deployed, and it's the same like hello thing that we had before. And this was something that we thought like, hey, this is perfect for review apps. So we took a stab at it. We did this experiment, and it looks exactly the same as the build API. So it took us like a week to get this running, and on the GitHub site, it's the same archive link, but instead of asking for the master branch, you just ask for whatever pull request branch is related to. And this is the old UI. I was going to show a video of that, but we've completely removed that since we've done another feature that I'll show in a bit. So you can see there like the pull requests that are open on GitHub, and you can click the Create App button. It spins it up. And the other one is an app that's already been created. And there's also this feature to say, like, create them automatically. So when you open a pull request, we spin up a new environment. And whenever you close the pull request or you merge it, we actually close down the whole thing. So the app only lives like while the pull request is open. So a quick demo of what this looks like on the GitHub side of things. So let's go and open up a pull request, and I'm going to find the root endpoint, which has the hello thing. So take the hello and change it to hello GitHub Satellite. And commit that to a branch called Satellite Hello. And change the title to something meaningful. And then create the pull request. And this is with review apps set up automatically. So you can see it says like requested a deployment. And then in a few seconds, it'll change to, ta-da, it's been spun up. So it's deployed this pull request to an app. And we can click on that link, and it takes us to the Hello GitHub Satellite thing that we just did. So to do this, like the comment that you saw there, we were talking about using GitHub comments before, but we were like, it's kind of hacking things. And it turned out that just a month before or something, GitHub had opened up an API called Deployments API. And Deployments API is kind of like commit statuses that you have for Travis CI and that stuff. But it's for deployments. So when we start spinning this up, we can say like, hey, I'm Heroku and I'm creating a deployment. And then if it succeeds, you can say like that succeeded or it failed. And it can link to different things. And just, I think it was a month ago, GitHub did some updates on the API to do some other cool stuff. So when I close the pull request now, you can see that this link there, it changes to temporarily deployed. So one of the changes they did to the API was to say you can spin up transient environments. And review apps are transient. They go away after a while. And when we close them down, we send an inactive status to GitHub. And it basically does this. So you can't link to the app anymore, because it would just be like this app doesn't exist anymore. So for review apps, like where does test data come from? That's a common question that we get. And we generally advise that you use seeds. So you basically have a script that generates data for your database, like something small, nothing too crazy. But we often get the question, can I please just copy this database? And we have a hacky way to do it, and we generally don't advise people to do that, because really bad things can happen. Let's say you copy your production database with all your user accounts and emails, and then you're testing something with emails. And you accidentally email all the customers on your app from your test environment. You don't want that. Or you can do even crazier things. So that's just a bag of hurt that we advise people not to do. But there are legit use cases for that. So it's something that we're hoping to bake better into the product rather than doing a hacky thing. Similarly to now public API, there are complications with this where these are long-running processes. Spinning up a review app can take up to half an hour in some cases, if the build has to do a lot of things. And on the GitHub side of things, so we have the app setup thing has its own state machine. It's spinning up and then it's done or it's torn down. And then the GitHub API also has the PR is open, closed, or merged. So there are two state machines. So compound is 3 state machines kind of. And tracking all that state is tricky. And it was something that we didn't give it too much thought into in the beginning. So race conditions. Who doesn't love race conditions? We've been closing them down like crazy. And I think, hoping that we've fixed it all, but probably not. But you know how it is. So yeah, that's always fun. So give thought into these kind of processes, state machines. There is a paper called Out of the Tar Pit. And it's one of the best academic papers I've read, and it's precisely on this, how to manage state. So if you've got time, it's 80 pages long. Please read that. The last bit that we did is something called pipelines. So this is our most recent project. And usually you have, in the software development lifecycle, you have development, staging, and production environments. So this is basically to encapsulate that and visualize it, make it look nice. Let's do some features around that stuff. And usually people on Heroku, they have at least 2 apps. like if you have any big system. Like you have a staging app and a production app. So and this is what people usually see like when they've been using that. But like we wanted to fix all that. So I'm going to set up now a pipeline for these two apps and enable a few features. I'm getting to the cool like thing in a bit. So you hit the create pipeline button. You give it a name. Sorry about the small size. I like scaled it up as much as I could before recording all this. And I connected to the same repo as the apps and hit create pipeline. And since it's connected to the same repo, when I'm adding apps to the pipeline, it knows that like this app is connected and it has staging in the name, so it's probably a staging app. The production app, it's probably a production app. So there we go. And for the staging app, I'm going to set up automatic deployments. So this is the new UI for that. So that's set up. And then I'm going to enable review apps. So this is a new UI for that. And it's based off the staging app. So if there are config vars that have to be inherited, which is not in this case, then it's going to copy them from there. And then like automatic review apps. So now we have this pipeline. So instead of having like development, staging, and production, we have review apps, staging, and production. Because we figured like if you have review apps, like why have development? Because like people are branch deploying to that, like stomping on each other's like deployments. So let's just have like review apps. And when we did pipelines, we decided like let's do a public API from day one. And that was also painful. Like getting a public API like from day one when you haven't like been in that mindset of like what's a pipeline, what does that all look like. So we had to load a lot of context and we had to talk with lots of people inside the company. We had to like iterate and reiterate on the API. It took probably a good like month or two to get the API kind of settled down. But the good thing is that we ended up with an API that I think is really good. And it kind of forced us to think about the internal data models. Like how are we going to build this? So what we ended up with, the code base for this is way, way simpler than review apps because it like maps really nicely to the mental model that we have. And it's way more like well thought out. So doing a public API, it takes time, but it's so worth it. From now on, like every project, I say every project, but it's probably going to be a lie. But yeah, the projects that we do now, they're going to have a public API. Another learning that we've come to realize after we did pipelines is that this one-to-one mapping I mentioned before, there's a one-to-one mapping between a pipeline and a repo, not necessarily the app. Like many apps can be connected to the same repo. And it also turns out that people want like access control on the pipeline level, not on the individual app level. So we've been thinking like we probably need to refactor quite a lot of things to move these like mechanisms over. And there's also add-ons and config vars and some stuff. And it's going to be a fun refactor in a big distributed system to do. Maybe one day. Let's see. So yet again, back to using pull requests. Using pull requests to drive continuous delivery. So now I'm to the demo where I'm going to show all this stuff together. So it's like GitHub Sync for automatic deployments, review apps for spinning up apps for every pull request, and then the pipelines thing. So building all this stuff, it's a lot of plumbing, but there's like not a lot of magic. It's a lot of work in it. But like if you're not using Heroku, you can like set stuff like this up with a GitHub API, given that you have like containers and stuff like that. So I have these like split screens. So it's like GitHub on the left side and then Heroku on the right side. So let's start by creating a PR. So it's the same change as I did before. So it's like hello GitHub Satellite. And the two apps there, they have the hello thing, initial hello thing. So you can see like we have a review app spinning up, and it shows like in real time that it's actually happening. So we're streaming API events to the dashboard. And you can see the builds going on, running database migrations, and drum roll. There we go. And you can see on the pull request it's the same as before. You have the app, and we click that, you see hello GitHub Satellite. So this is like a trivial example of a review app. It's just a small code change. But it can be like you have database migration. So people have like big databases connected to this thing. Setting up, like there's a post-deploy script thing you can do. So people are setting up like resources on AWS or doing other crazy API integrations, creating OAuth clients. Like this is not just for trivial setups. So yeah, then like the Heroku dashboard, like the thing you're looking at, that's actually using all of this stuff. I had to blur out because there might be some like product secrets, but like yeah. So you can see we have like a lot of pull requests open and like one staging app, one production app. And then like the thing that happens when you merge a pull request, you can see I have like auto deploy set up for staging, and then let's go ahead and merge the pull requests. And you can see there's a reflex to always delete the branch right after. But review app goes away, and you can see that staging starts building. And after a few seconds, there we go. And then we can go ahead and verify that what we actually built on staging is what we were expecting. So we'll head over to the browser and open up the staging app. So it was hello before, and now it's at hello GitHub Satellite. And rather than triggering a rebuild for the production app, like, can we just take whatever we built on the staging app and copy that over, like the build artifact that we did? And that's actually what we do when we do these promotions. So when you hit the promote to production button, you get this modal up. And since this pipeline is connected to GitHub, you can show you which commits are in there, and you can actually click through and open up the diff on GitHub. So you can see which changes you're about to deploy. So let's head back from there, back to the promotion, and hit the promote button. And you can see that this promotion actually takes way quicker than the actual build. And that's like just copying the build artifact. It's way smaller than triggering a whole rebuild. So builds can take up to like half an hour for some apps. But yeah, let's open up the production app, and there we go. Like we've taken something that was in a pull request, demoed it, and like made sure that it's actually the thing that we want. Automatically like deployed that to staging when we merged the branch, and then promoted it to production. So this has been like using pull requests to drive continuous delivery, and like these three features, as I said in the beginning, like we just like did those. We didn't really think this was what we were going to build, but it was like when we started taking the step back, like looking at like what do we actually have now, we were like, whoa, we have like continuous delivery mechanisms. Like that's awesome. And so it's when you do these experiments and fast iterations, it's like it takes you somewhere sometimes. You don't know what it is that you'll end up with, but I think we have something that's kind of cool. And all of this stuff, it's something that we call Heroku Flow. So there's like Git Flow, GitHub Flow, and now there's Heroku Flow. And it's a lot of hard work in this stuff, and like the team has done great. I'm super proud of what we did, and thank you all for listening.